All right, welcome to this episode of Goalie Resiliency. A little bit of a name tweak. I'm Chris Dawson, along with the lovely and talented, intelligent, rock star like Dr. Rob Graham. And we're going to talk some goaltending, but really today we have a real treat. Both of us are going to take a shot at talking to Tom Hedican, who has a tremendous resume working with goalies in the OHL and working with goalies that went all the way to being Stanley Cup champions. So Rob, you're going to talk a little bit about your conversation that we're going to take a look at.
I'm really excited, Chris, to be speaking with Tom Hedican today. He really was a pioneer locally for goalie development. He inspired myself as somebody who's currently working with local goalies, but his reach is much further than local goalie development. He has developed NHL caliber goalies. He's worked in Europe, and he has an extensive resume in the OHL. I'm also excited to talk to Tom about one of my favorite goalies, Mike Palmateer, and we always have to have a Leaf shout out, Chris.
There we go. All right. Let's go to that interview right now. Tom Hedican with our own Dr. Rob Graham.
Well, welcome to another edition of our Goaltender Resiliency podcast with Chris Dawson and myself. I'm really excited and really honored to be here with a legend in goaltender development locally, but not just locally, but well beyond that. And we're going to get into that. And that is Mr. Tom Hedican. Welcome to the Icebox, Tom.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
Well, we've Chris and I have been talking for a while about having you in, and so we're really excited to get some of your insights today on goaltending development. But let's go back to your early days. You've done a lot of work all over with NHL caliber goalies and mentoring goalies into the NHL. But let's talk a little bit about your early work with our North Bay Centennials back in the day in the OHL.
Yeah, that was, I was working with the London Knights actually at the time, and I was part-time with them, and I was full-time with the London Free Press because I did my journalism degree after my original BA at the University of Guelph. And I just found that when I left work and went to the arena, I was happiest. And so when the opportunity came up to come up to North Bay in my hometown and work in the OHL full-time, I jumped at it. And that was mid-90s. The team the year before had won the OHL championship, and we had 17 players returning. So it looked like, a dream scenario. It did not turn out that way. I think we went out in the first round, and so the results weren't there that year. I spent 2 years with Centennials, and then I did a year of consulting in Europe in the pro leagues there, which I really loved. I just found working with the older players was actually easier. Like, you're not starting from scratch. They've already got most of their skills developed, and you're working more on technique and reading the play, reading the rush, and things like that. So I enjoyed that, but then I was rehired by the Knights.
Interesting.
Again. Well, it gets better because after that stint with the Knights, we won our division championship after they finished, I think, last in the country or something like that the year before. I was then rehired by North Bay again. So I went from London to North Bay, back to London, back to North Bay.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the goalies that you worked with in the Centennials. Alex Auld being one that I recall watching quite closely and watching his development, and another one, Andrew Penner. But feel free to talk a little bit about your work with those goalies. Alex Auld, of course, being one who did go on to play in the NHL.
Yeah, Alex was extremely intelligent. Like, he was just a straight A student. And the real measure of intelligence to me is you're book smart, but you're common sense smart, and he had both. So he was a pleasure to work with. Lots of questions, good questions, but would do anything you asked him to do. And Andrew was the same. And Andrew was a extremely talented, like a phenomenal athlete, just a great athlete. And it was interesting because Alex, I think the year before, did not have a good experience in North Bay. He played a few games and he thought he'd get more. So he was very hesitant to come back to North Bay. And when Mike Kelly and I took over the team, he was the first call. And, we said, you're going to play a lot. And we just started with basics and then moved into things like, I think you have a clip of it later on, rush analysis, how to analyze the attack through the neutral zone, whether you're even number, outnumbered, 3-on-1, 3-on-2. and then adjust your depth. So obviously, if you're outnumbered, you can't be as aggressive. And so we worked a lot on reading the rush, reading the play, and I see that. I saw that even in Mike McIver this year. I don't know if he did it on purpose or it was just instinct, but he gave up depth when he was outnumbered, and that made him available to make some of the phenomenal saves that he made going from one side of the net to the other. And it looks like they were phenomenal, and they were. But the reason was because he gave up some depth, so he had a shorter distance to travel.
That's really interesting. I have a little saying, Tom, that I use with my goalies: when there's no back door, take a little more.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
I think you're referring to that. But I want to go back to something you just mentioned about the intelligence of those goaltenders. I do a lot of work with my goalies because I happen to believe as they climb the food chain, the mental side of the game becomes very important. Do you have any insights in terms of the higher level goalies you've worked with in terms of their emotional and mental intelligence and how they approach the game?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that the most successful ones have is a very calm demeanor. They don't get rattled. Goals don't bother them. Early goals don't bother them. I know when I played, if I got scored on in the first 5 minutes, I'd extrapolate and go, okay, well, if this keeps up, it's going to be, 4 goals in the first and the second and third, and it'll be 12-0. And they're the opposite. They're so calm. Christobal Huet is so calm. I remember when he was with Montreal, and he was just a throw-in in the trade from LA. But he started playing well and practicing well, and they decided to give him a start in Ottawa. And I said to him before the game, how do you feel? And he goes, nothing to lose, because he wasn't playing anyway. But that was his mental position. It was just calm no matter what happens. And the next shot is the most important shot.
And it's an interesting insight that you make there, because it kind of begs the question, is that something that is innate? Is it something that goaltenders are born with, or is it something we can develop? I developed the Hockey Life Skills Mentorship Program that attempts to work with goalies and work with them on everything that nobody ever taught me. Mm-hmm. So I happen to believe that it is a skill that we can work on, but it seems to me that in the higher level goalies you've worked with, it's something that they're almost born with innately.
Yeah, it really is their personality. I mean, you can get them to focus on things and forget about bad goals. And I have an acronym, CRAFT: cancel the negative thought, replace, affirm that thought, focus on that shot, train your brain.
Love it.
And that's what you're doing. And it goes back into, it's a strange story. It's all about psychocybernetics, goal-oriented behavior. And it goes back to a plastic surgeon in the 60s who corrected people's disfigurements in their face, a salesman, people like that. And within about 3 weeks, he found that they experienced increased self-esteem, more success. But he didn't focus on the people who were successful. He focused on the other people. And because they never changed their self-image, they experienced no success. So how you see yourself is huge.
Fascinating. That's really fascinating. I'm wearing a shirt that my good friend Chris Dawson gave me, Mike Palmatier. Now, before we went on camera, you shared a little story. Mike Palmatier was one of my mentors kind of growing up. Care to share a story a little bit about Mike Palmatier?
Not really, but I will. When I went to the University of Guelph, we won the Ontario Championship my first year. And my second year, I decided I was going to be Mike Palmatier. So I was flipping, flopping, diving, because I loved watching him play. He was fun to watch. But it nearly ruined my whole season. We ended up winning a second championship, but I didn't have a great season. And I wanted to be Mike Palmatier.
Well, that's interesting. Nobody did the 2-pad stack like Mike Palmatier. Yeah. With all of your wisdom and all of your expertise, I mean, as somebody who currently works in our local landscape for developing goalies, you were the pioneer. You were the one locally and well beyond that, obviously, who kind of set the landscape for us today that work with goalies. For a parent of an emerging goalie, what would be a piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, that's a good question. I know you've done tremendous work here too, Rob, and so have others. But I think the number one thing is not to put a whole lot of pressure on them. It's already a pressurized situation. I've always said that goaltending is the only position in any sport that can win or lose the game by itself. If you stand on your head and you have a great game, your team can have a very poor game and you could still win. Team can play great, goalie plays very poorly, you can still lose. So I would say let them have fun, let them play other sports, and I think if they can get coaching, that's going to. I had none. Like you said, you had none. I had none either. I mean, didn't know anything. I just was playing the sport, playing the position. So coaching is a big factor. But I think young kids, they don't need any more pressure. It's a pressure situation. It's a pressure position, and they need to have fun, or they're probably not going to continue to play.
What about for that goaltender that is playing at the AAA level currently and is really looking to play at a higher level? One word of advice, one word of caution, some insight from yourself on that.
I'd have to say the two words I'd say first are work ethic. You've got to, if you're trying to get to the OHL or beyond, at some point you're going to come head to head with somebody else who's maybe done more work than you did, or maybe not. And if you outwork those people, that ones you don't even know today, that you're going to come head to head to in the competition somewhere along the line, your work ethic's going to take you a long way. And if you don't do the work.
Well, you have demonstrated work ethic in your career as a goalie coach, as somebody who's developed goalies at the highest level. So you've actually demonstrated that through practice. Just before we get ready to wrap up, I want to play a little game with you, and it's called No Sitting on the Fence. Okay, no sitting on the fence, Tom. And anybody out there that's watching this that's younger, you might have to Google this. Let's start off. Hasek or Brodeur?
Oh, Brodeur. No question. Hasek, the reason to me he was successful, he was all over the place. He was unpredictable, but he protected the lower part of the net. And I always say to goalies, if you can protect the bottom half of the net, you force a shooter not only to negotiate a horizontal angle, he has to get it between the posts, but now a vertical angle, over you and under the bar. And the closer the proximity the puck is to the goalie, the more impossible that gets. As you know, it's going to go over your gloves, it's going to go over the crossbar. So Hasek did a phenomenal job of protecting low, and I think that's why he was successful. But Brodeur.
Fabulous insight. Okay, I know the answer to this already. Leafs or Habs?
Leafs. I know. I know. I didn't. I'm not a Leaf fan, but it nearly killed me when Christobal Huet was playing for Montreal to have to cheer for them. So I'm going for. I go for the Leafs.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that. And then finally, 2-pad stack or RVH?
I got to go RVH. I think that's the latest. And I mean, the 2-pad stack's fun to watch, but I don't think it's as effective. You're not in a very good recovery position when you're lying on your side. So RVH.
Tom, this has been an absolutely fascinating interview for me. I've learned a lot just through our brief time just sitting here. I look forward to some future conversations and tapping into your considerable wisdom and expertise. And I know that my good friend Chris Dawson has a lot of archival footage, and we're going to throw it to some interesting footage that he's dug up of some of your early work in the OHL.
Welcome to Sense Tracks. I'm Chris Dawson. Well, many times the goaltender is considered the forgotten player on the team. Well, on the Centennials, the goaltenders are far from forgotten, as Alex Auld and Andrew Penner have practices geared just for them.
Quite a bit on your lateral movement, you're exploding and then closing up, making the forwards pick a hole, nothing through you.
It looks like your typical practice, but this one isn't for the shooters. It's specifically for the guys wearing the masks and pads. It's goalie practice, organized by Associate GM and goalie coach Tom Hedican.
Well, I think it's a specialized type of situation for the goalies. A lot of times in practice, you have to gear the practice for 20 players, and it can't center around 1 or 2 guys, but they do need special attention. They need individualized attention and drills, and I think when you get out there with 6 or 8 guys, you can focus solely on the goalies and solely on the skills that you want to develop.
Although Alex Auld and Andrew Penner already know their share about goaltending, these practices are still beneficial to their development.
It taught me to keep my glove lower and in close and close up the holes when I go down, and just different technique styles that I never really focused on before. And it's allowed me to see myself do them, and then I've been getting better.
He's taught me a lot about analyzing the rush, my positioning, when the puck's coming into our end, and just staying tight when my movement's, not giving up any holes. And big thing is if they're going to beat me, make them beat me with a shot, make them beat me, and not don't try to cut down on the weak goals through me, through my arms and that. So those are probably 2 of the big things.
All right, that was a a look back in time. It just seems like yesterday seeing Alex Auld and Andrew Penner, and like you guys touched on, not too many times a goalie coach has two goalies that one that had a long NHL career and another one that he didn't get into any action, but he was at NHL training camps. To have two guys at the same time of that caliber is pretty amazing.
It is really amazing, Chris, but I think the interesting point about Tom Hedican is his reach has gone far beyond goalie development. His work with Hockeyville, Craft Hockeyville, his work with Coach for Food, and some of the connection you have with him, I think is a really intriguing part and a very important part of the Coach Tom Hedican story.
All right, now for the tough questions. This is Chris Dawson with Tom Hedican after our great segment with the doctor. And Tom, we're going to delve into a little bit more of some of the special people that have really you've really put your fingerprints on, and certainly talking about OHL goalies like Andrew Penner and Alex Auld were special guys. But there's none that's really more special than the guy that really that you really helped put him on the map, and of course caused a lot of even national attention for yourself in Christobal Huet. So obviously this was fast forward past the days in the OHL. And it kind of goes with, you touched on it a little bit, you really felt you had a lot of success with the older goalies, and of course Christobal Huet working in Switzerland, that's where you found this diamond in the French rough, so to speak.
Yeah, and it was not an easy situation for Christo when he came to Lugano. Lugano's owned by a billionaire, and it's a very rich team, obviously, and their players, their imports, we only had 4 then, and they were always NHL guys. And so when Christo came along, this guy from France, the fans and the media were going, who's this guy? And they wanted him gone. And after the first ice session in August, I came off the ice and the president was in the coach's office, and he said, "What's your analysis?" And I said, "Of what?" And he said, "Him." He said, "Let's get rid of him right now. Pay him his 3 years and just get rid of him." And I said, "No, I think he's going to be okay. He's raw, he's young, he's 22." And we ended up winning the Swiss national championship with him that year. But he was just a phenomenal athlete in goalie equipment.
Talk about where did he go from, and how did that process happen from, because I don't think it was as common. I mean, obviously you see a lot more movement from Europe to North America, but back in the late 2000s when Christo was playing in Switzerland, aside from the lockout time, there wasn't a lot of that movement from Europe, Europe into the National Hockey League.
Yeah, true, and especially for a kid from France. Like, people think when they say, "Oh, he's French," they think he's from Quebec. He's not. He's the only player from France to ever win the Stanley Cup, and only one of 2 that ever play in the NHL. So, I talked to so many NHL scouts for the first 2 or 3 years that I coached Christo and said, you've really got to look at this guy. And it was by fluke that Dave Taylor, I think, was the GM of LA then, and he was in Davos watching a Davos player, and we were playing against them, and he saw Christo pull out a 3-1 win, and he was phenomenal. And I just kept talking to Christo about it, and he thought I was crazy. He literally thought I was crazy, because he'd say, "Tom, nobody in France thinks about the NHL. You think about soccer, tennis, not the NHL." But I said, "You got to dream, and you got to dream big, because you can do it." And he ended up being an NHL All-Star in Montreal. He led the league in save percentage, got the Roger Crozier Trophy, and ended up with the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, nothing can complain about that. But Tom, not only was he, obviously a great goalie, and you would help train him, but he jumped on an amazing program that you started a few years before. You'd been working with Christo with Coach for Food, and we're going to do a little magic here, and I just want to. This is from Wrigley Field in 2009 at the Winter Classic when he was with Chicago, the team that he won his cup with, and Christo took time in, like I said, it was sort of a crazy place to watch a hockey game, but he had this to say about his friend Tom.
Well, I can only say good words about Tom. He's such a great man, and that shows what kind of guy he is. Gives a lot of time to do that, and time is precious, and he's doing a great job with that. He's got good connection, and he's a great coach that helped me a lot throughout my career. And so, that's good to be a good man sometimes.
When did you get that?
That was in 2009.
Kidding.
Good to be a good man sometimes. How does that make you feel?
Well,
when a guy like that says those things about you?
Well, it means everything. I mean, I often think I don't care what they think of me when I'm coaching. I care what they think of me 10 years from now or 20 years from now. Did I teach them or help them to become a better person, not just a better goalie, but, to give back to your community? And my dad always said, and my dad died 2 years ago, and I still remember, he was very, not a man of a lot of words, but he'd always say, it's nice to be nice.
That's fantastic. We can't finish this interview without talking a little bit about Hockeyville. Obviously, Christo actually made a visit here, kind of during the crazy process, and the outreach program that we came up with, the Canadian Pond Hockey Face-Off, and the Coach for Food ended up being a program talking about what we can do good for the community through Coach for Food and what we can do for others, trying to, bring kids from, areas that year it was a group of kids from Louisiana that lost their homes in the Hurricane Katrina. But tell me a little bit about what that Coach for Food program, and of course we can't talk without talk about the boss, and I mean, really, I know we're a goalie show, but Bruce is really the boss, and over any goaltender you've ever trained.
That's for sure. And I got the idea for Coach for Food because of all his work with food banks, and you can read about it. He drops into the New Jersey food banks on Saturday and Sunday by himself, stocks the shelves, unloads trucks, and leaves. And so I just thought, what could I do? And I thought, I'll trade my coaching for food drives. And so I started running, practices, but we were doing pro drills, even with novices. We, simplify them a little bit, but and then Christo was generous enough to fly up from Montreal and meet with all the kids and the coaches who took part that year. And so we ended up raising almost £1.5 million for food banks in Ontario.
You should be very proud of that.
Yeah, it's something that I'm certainly glad I got off my rear end to do something for the community, because I had to look myself in the mirror at that point. And I was in my 30s, and I thought, you're not doing anything for anybody else, really. And so I thought I needed to do it.
Maybe lastly, I think the last local goalie that you've had your fingerprints on, and I mean, now he's kind of ages you out now, he's retired, but I think Nate McDonald was probably one of the last guys you worked with in North Bay. Maybe talk a little bit about what kind of a goaltender he was, and obviously now working with the battalion and training goalies, kind of following in your footsteps, and of course the doctor's footsteps as well.
Absolutely, Rob, too. He reminds me a little bit of Alex Auld in that very cerebral, very smart, good person, hardworking, listened, asked good questions, and wasn't afraid to try new things. So I think Nate will do very well in that position.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. I can say that good man, you don't just, Christobal doesn't just say it, it's true. I remember the first, when I was laid off from CTV, and you were one of the first people to call, and certainly through programs like Coach for Food's show, and obviously the way you worked with your goaltenders, you care a lot, and I think that really bleeds into what you did, and you should be very proud of what you've accomplished, and you should take up your buddy who wants you to write a book. I'm putting you on the spot again, but thank you so much. This has been awesome having you on here.
It was my pleasure. I always like to surround myself with good people like you and Rob, so it was my honor to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Wow, that was really inspirational hearing about some of that work that Tom has done, in particular myself being a drummer in a rock band, to hear his connection and his love of Bruce Springsteen. I found that fascinating. But I think, Chris, for me, what I found very inspirational is the fact here was a man who said in his early 30s he had to get off his butt and he wanted to do something for his community, and he wanted to inspire more deeply. So for me, I found that very touching.
Yeah, it's a great story and a great man, and obviously you could tell by the look on Tom's face. He was pretty shocked that I had that archived interview with Christo talking about how special he is as a person. I think that Tom deserves a lot of accolades for what he's accomplished as a goalie coach and what he's accomplished as a person in this community.
And I think that's what really makes our podcast so interesting is you have some really deep archive footage, and I look forward to more of that coming out of the closet, if you will, in upcoming episodes.
I just want to say something too that we're going to touch on. I mean, I know you're the technical guy, but I just thought you guys talked about the RVH and the double pad stack, and it's just been really incredible watching the hockey playoffs. And you always talk about the double pad stack. It takes away the bottom of the net. Man, oh man, in the playoffs this year, at every level, the VH where the goalies are going down before the player gets below the dot or by the goal line, the amount of goals you're seeing guys score. I mean, Logan Thompson, one of the best goalies, in the National Hockey League, he got chased from a series because he was being exposed going down in that RVH and getting pucks beating him over the ear and into the top shelf. That's really incredible, and it shows about I guess the skill of the forwards, but it also shows you go down too early, you're in trouble, man.
And I'm pretty sure there's going to be some goaltending coaches that are looking at this, and we're going to be drawing back to holding your feet and looking at what we're going to have to do as goalie coaches and goalies to kind of reverse that trend and take those types of bad goals away.
Well, this has been a real treat. I know you enjoyed talking to Tom. I always enjoyed talking to Tom, knowing him since the 90s. But we'll have more guys like Tom Hedican and some more younger goaltenders on here too, and talk about the wonderful world of goaltending, equipment, hockey cards, you name it. We're going to talk about it. So I'm looking forward to this adventure moving forward.
It's a pleasure, my dear friend. Can't wait.
All right, that's another edition of Goalie Resiliency.